Welcome to the Oasis of Awareness, where we dive deep into systemic change through positivity, pleasure, playfulness, and partnership. This is my sister on the path of the divine feminine and friend, Chelsea Adair, who is a mind-body coach, a yoga teacher, and an all-around body expert. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited to talk to you. We've already had a little pre-talk about what we want to bring out into the world. And then we actually drank some ceremonial grade cacao. We've both been on a cacao
kick here.
Cacao kick lately. And it just really opens up the heart is what it's meant to do. But I feel like it also brings us into alignment and really synchronicity. And that's what we saw when we pulled some cards. And she and I actually met in yoga class in divine flow and synchronicity. And, I think we had maybe said 2 sentences to each other. And the second one was like, I'm into helping women and women's empowerment. And so from then on, it was just a quick connection. And what we wanted to talk about today is really finding that alignment in the body. So, there's a lot of us on the spiritual path right now, and we're, there's lots of great opportunities to learn how to meditate and, work on your spiritual health. And I think society in general values how important that is for everyone. And it's one thing to talk the talk and another thing to walk the walk. And one of the things that I'd like to do on this podcast and this YouTube channel is to talk about the things that not that many people are talking about, and to bring some of those perspectives from multiple perspectives, but also maybe some of the sensitive topics and some of the things that you just haven't heard of or people are afraid to talk about. And I know, Chelsea, one of the things that you do as a coach is you help women find their voice and what they're afraid to talk about and bring that out into the open.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then she just got back from Bali, where you were, well, do you want to talk a little bit about what you were doing in Bali?
Sure. So I just spent the last 7 weeks in Bali. Initially, my trip there was to attend an advanced yoga training called the Embodied Flow Method, which was created by an experienced yogi named Tara Judell and a psychotherapist and ballet dancer named Dr. Scott Lyons. And what they did was they combined the practices of tantric tradition, psychology, somatic experiencing, alongside the traditional hatha yoga asana practices to create this new technology for practitioners and teachers and students to understand what it feels like to be in flow. And what we call it is a moving meditation. So embodiment is truly a moving meditation, and it's a way for us to connect to our deepest sense of self and an understanding of the world around us and how the larger self and embodied self combine to create this beautiful, nurturing energy of the universe.
Oh, I love that. A moving meditation, because I feel like that's really what life is. Life is a moving meditation. We get up and we eat, we drink our cacao, we exercise, we do our work, we show up. We can show up meditatively, and we do things with intention. I was just on post on Instagram today, a little quote about it, do things with intention, pause and do it with intention. So what do you think are some simple ways that people could be more in the present moment, be doing things in a more embodied way, and to get into that flow just on a daily basis in the day-to-day activities?
That's a great question. I feel like I can go on so many different roads with that question. But what first comes to mind for me is creating space within yourself. So, and how can you do that? Meditation, what we think of it as today and what most people see it as in, the modern day videos or TV or talk shows or magazines, is a person sitting quietly with their eyes closed and sitting in this resting posture for an extended period of time. But what I've seen meditation to really be is a connection between the energy and the self. So creating space for that to happen, there's multiple technologies to use. So some of the ones that we like to use in embodied flow are free movement, which is a little different from dance. Tapping and somatic sensation is another one. Breath work and journaling. So something that's simple for most people to begin with is journaling. Having some simple journaling prompts to refer to and begin writing on really gets it gets the emotions flowing and puts the words into an actual manifestation, and you're actually seeing what's coming out on paper. And that allows you to witness the self. And what that can do for a person is it allows you to, again, witness the self and approach your day from intention, because now you're seeing how you are showing up, and is this how I want to show up today? Is there something that needs to shift? Is there something that gets to shift? And then you're able to move forward throughout the day from that point and in that space and from that intention.
I love that. I feel that also when you write down, let's say, a goal or a desire in writing, it's the first step of bringing that into the physical world. So we have this desire in our heart, or we have this dream, this daydream, and we write it down. It's like it's now begun. It's on its way. It's just a matter of time. And then you're talking about, you know, using it as a flow, like taking that spiritual energy and bringing it into the physical as well. In fact, one of the tips I have in my document, Top 10 Habits to Manifest Your Dreams, if you sign up at my website, natashaedwina.com, I have a newsletter, and you sign up, you get this top 10 tips to manifest your dreams, and that's one of the tips. Write it down and bring it into physical reality. So what are 3 writing prompts? Can you think of 3 like really powerful writing prompts that somebody could start with, like tonight? They could, before they go to bed, or tomorrow morning when they wake up.
So 3 writing prompts that I like to use is, what am I feeling in my body? And what that does is it allows me to sit in myself, and again, it's the moving of the pen on paper, and it's that actual writing down where I can actually see what am I feeling in my body. And then how can I sit with what is here, and that is writing solutions out for just being with yourself.
Is that part of the first prompt, or is that the second?
That's the second prompt.
Okay. For the first one, I want to ask you how you deal with people who, let's say, you know, people have been through a lot of trauma, or have had to be living in a very masculine world
where there's no feeling.
Yeah, you just don't even recognize it because you've numbed out. You're so good at numbing out, or you're so good at stuffing it down, or you're just so good at putting your head down and working, or just moving on and saying that's no big deal. And then if you're sitting there with your pen and paper thinking, how do I feel in my body? Was that the prompt? Is how do I feel in my body? What if they
have no idea?
Nothing. Like, what if they just feel nothing? Then what do they do? What do you suggest?
I have run into that a couple of times, and what I like to do in that case is ask myself, like, what's blocking me, or what thoughts are most present at the forefront of my mind. And a lot of times those are the things that are actually blocking you from being present, the things that are pulling you out of the present, out of the body. So what's in the forefront of my mind? And that can be like taxes, or taking out the trash, simple things like that. But as you begin writing what's at the forefront of my mind, or what am I thinking about most often, and you get that out on paper, the things behind it, it's almost like a filing cabinet. Like, you get one out, and then the next one, and then the next one, and you're kind of removing the layers, the veils, basically, of what is really there. And it takes some time, and it takes some practice. And I think that's the great thing about journaling, is it starts out kind of difficult, and you're not really sure where it's going. But when you go back and you return it to what you wrote and you read it over, you're like, wow, I did not realize that. So you're kind of opening up a new portal in that way.
It's interesting that you use the word did you say filing cabinet? Yeah, filing cabinet, because there's when I was actually doing my original PhD dissertation, it was supposed to be on the experience of synchronicity. So I looked into like the established literature on concepts that were similar to synchronicity, and one of them was this guy named Genlin. I don't even remember his first name, but he was one of the authors I used, and he has a technique called focusing. And that's exactly what you do. He says, take everything and put it in a file cabinet outside of your mind. And that's what it is. It's focusing. The way that you focus and go inward is by clearing all the clutter, and you just keep putting it, like, you can have as many, levels as you want until it's all put away, and then all that you're left with is what's there.
Right.
So it's like peeling back the layers.
And I think that's so important too for, manifestation and creativity, and allowing new things to come to the forefront. You have to identify what's there and what is blocking you from seeing what's beneath the surface.
Oh my gosh,
important.
so important. Yeah. And I work with a lot of creatives who they can't, they're blocked. They know what they want. They know exactly what they want, but they can't get there. So that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
So this is how powerful this technique is. It's just a simple journaling prompt, but you can take back your power, put that outside of yourself, and actually start to get into your flow again, your creative flow. Wow. Absolutely. Okay. So the second prompt, you said, after you've identified, now we're in the master's degree phase. We've already gotten our bachelor's in emotional intelligence. Second phase is, what did you say?
How can I sit with what is here?
How can I sit with what is here? Oh,
so
okay.
That is more of a call to action. So how can I, although it is sit with what is here, that means how can I be with what I'm seeing or what I've revealed? Because
sometimes a call of action is surrendering.
I almost feel like all the time that is. Yeah. It has to be.
It's not doing anything. It's doing not doing anything.
Yeah. That's what's hardest for most people to do.
Yeah.
The people are happy to take a solution, some type of action, some, step that they can take. They're happy to take that. But if you ask them to sit with what's there and surrender, that's where, everything starts to come up. So this is where you get to get creative and you get to get quiet with yourself and see, how can I sit with what's here? What do I need to do in order to clear the space? So, for example, for me, in order to sit in meditation for an extended period of time, which I enjoy doing with no music, no sound, I love to just listen to the sounds of nature and find my comfortable seat and stay there. In order for me to do that, I have to dance first. So how can I sit with what's here? What are my solutions? Well, I need to dance. I need to move. And then I can sit with what's here. And then I can be. And it's a really powerful way to, yes, use your voice and listen to your own voice, because I've often found for myself that I would look outwardly for solutions or what to do, or this is the next tool to use for you to have a great meditation and tap into yourself. But I had the answer within me all along, and it wasn't until I allowed myself to give that answer to me. Like I had the permission at that point I had the authority, the agency to tell myself, this is what you need to do to sit with what's here. Yeah,
it's like trusting yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow. Okay. And that reminds me of a conversation I was having with I'm in a PhD program for mind body medicine, and some of my fellow students that are in this program are creatives like me. My first passion was art, and so I like to do pencil sketches of people. And so there's a couple other creatives in this program, and we've said before we can actually sit down and write a research paper or work on our dissertation, we have to do a creative project. So one of my friends, he'll do some art, and then he gets that out of the way, then he can buckle down and write. Yeah. And then the other friend, she also is very creative, so she'll do some kind of art. For me, it's more writing, so I'll do like a creative piece of writing, like an opinion piece or a poem or something emotional writing, and then I can get into the very left brain research, which is kind of boring writing, but it's important, right? It's important to validate these things that we're talking about, because if we have research and validation behind it, and people know and are educated about how and why these things work, then they're more likely to do it.
Right.
So now we know, if you've got writer's block, whether you're a creative writer or if you're a student and you're wanting to find out how to get unblocked, you can sit what's getting in the way of what's there and sitting with what's there. And then, do you have a third one?
Third most powerful journal prompt. How can I love myself more today? I was going to say, this isn't really a prompt, but writing a love letter to yourself is probably one of the most powerful tools I use personally. But using the journal prompt of how can I love myself more today is, again, another way to put onto paper all the solutions that you already have inside you. You know how you want to be loved and how you desire to be loved by somebody else. We all have a list of the kind of partner that we want, but how can I take a small step for myself today to love myself in that way? And it could be as simple as drinking more water or telling myself that I look beautiful, or offering something to somebody if that makes me feel good to give. So how can I love myself more today?
What's your favorite way to love yourself in the daily, just the day-to-day?
In the day-to-day, I would say, for me, it always comes back to health and doing something good for my body. So when I'm making good decisions for my body, and I want this to be taken in a different sense than on a strict diet and exercising all the time. It's different. For me, loving myself can just be drinking more water, or sometimes it's eating French fries. Like, it's what feels good for me in that day. And when I'm not restricting myself, that it comes from a place of fear. But when I come at it from a place of love and know that this is just life and we get to experience we get to experience the pleasures of life and what's around us and not restrict ourselves, that's loving. So,
well, it goes back to embodiment and intention, and the intention with which you do things. So if you're going to the gym because you've been beating yourself up all morning and saying, I really have to go to the gym, look at these fat legs, or look at these fat thighs, or I need muscles, or whatever else, that gym workout is going to be helpful to you still because your body wants to move, but you've just did it in such a abusive way.
Absolutely, yeah.
But if you go to the gym because you're like, I really want to let my body move and breathe and sweat. I mean, I was in yoga, hot yoga, and I know we go to the same studio, so you've had this experience, but you just sweat so much in that hot yoga class, and then you drink like a whole shit ton of water, and it's just like you're literally like rinsing. I just feel like you're rinsing your body. Like it's going in, it's going out, it's going in, it's going out. It's like wringing a sponge, and you get to detox all of the emotions, all of that stuff. So for me, hot yoga is a really loving. It's a way to self-love. And then I just feel. I'm just going to be honest here because this is just us talking, nobody's listening right now, just us two. But I'm in there, I just feel sexy. Yeah. Like, I just feel sexy because you're not wearing many clothes and you're just looking at your body and skin glistening and just the sweat dripping down, and you're in a room full of other people with the same thing, and everybody's so intensely focused on like what they're doing. You have those big mirrors, so you get a chance to look at yourself. And when I went the other day, I was actually feeling really bad about myself, my body in particular, because I hadn't been working out as much. My business is just going through a major upsurge right now. I've got a lot of projects going on, so I probably only made it maybe one workout session the last 2 weeks. So I felt yucky. And then I went into class and I actually saw myself. I saw my body and I was like, girl, you're doing good. You're fine. Like, it's all good. But yeah, so those are ways that you can love yourself. Like,
I love that. I love that because you felt sexy. Like that is a beautiful way to love yourself and acknowledge this human vessel that we have and the beauty that's within and shines.
And how strong that you are. I know I played 3 sports in high school, and the idea was just go win the game. If you have knee pain, just wrap it up, throw some icy hot, get back in there. Doesn't matter if it hurts, we're just going to numb it until we win the game. That was the goal. And I that was ingrained in me to keep pushing past the pain. And then I had a breakdown in my early 20s, and I couldn't get out of bed. I was pushing for so long that my body just shut down. It just shut down on me. I went through a depressive episode, adrenal fatigue, all of these things, and I had to learn how to get myself back up there. And one of the things that helped me learn was yoga. Because for the first time, I had permission to love my body and to only go to my edge.
Yes.
And to have appreciation for how strong my body was, even in the smallest, slightest movements. Now, a very masculine culture sees something like yoga and says it's soft or it's not very strong. But yogis, I mean, it's all those little muscles to be able to do some of these poses and hold these poses. It's a lot of strength, and not only physical strength, but mental and emotional strength. Because you're, especially in hot yoga when it's 105 degrees, you're like, am I gonna die in this room today? This might be the day that I die. And then you're like, nah, I'm gonna make it through. But yeah, just stuff like that. Or even something too, another thing, speaking of sexy, when you wear the good underwear, like
the good days.
Yeah, like the nice underwear. So it's like, let's wear why are you saving that perfect pair for like a special occasion? Just wear it today. It doesn't matter.
Totally. Yeah, especially if it makes you feel good. Yeah. And I love what you said about yoga too. In you understand what your edge is, and then rather than pushing past it, you understand what your edge is. And yes, you might test it and you might go and go a little bit further, but it's a slower process. And I mean, the way that you experience your body in those moments is so different than when you're playing a sport and you're pushing past the pain and you're doing it, and the intention again behind it is completely different. And I think yoga is a beautiful practice for accessing like the parts of our body that we don't normally pay attention to. But it's also a great practice to just understand the relationship between your body and space and how it's actually supporting you. And it's a method of receiving and giving at the same time. Whereas, and this is why I just love the embodied flow method that I teach, is it talks about how to relate to the universe, the energy around us, rather than seeing yoga as a practice on, okay, I'm on my mat, the alignment is all that matters, I need to hold this pose and like breathe and think and all these things, and how do I meditate, is this good enough? That's like what I so often see in yoga culture. But what it really is understanding how to listen to your body and see how it feels in this moment, and then receive the support of the space surrounding you, and receive the support from the ground and the energy as it flows up through your feet and all the way up through your spine and out through the crown of your head. It's like this energetic magnetic pull where you're giving and receiving, and in those moments when you're pushing towards your edge, it's also a gift that you're giving yourself, and you're showing yourself, this is how far I can go, and tomorrow I might go a little bit further.
Challenging yourself rather than, you know, being harsh with yourself, being, you know, violent to yourself, really, when you're pushing yourself beyond that edge. And
that's when you get to experience those moments of like, I feel sexy today, because you're already in a space of like love and compassion and embodiment and feeling your body, because when you're punishing it, you're not really in your body. And so when you're in those moments where you're in your body and you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, damn, I feel sexy today, it's because you're in it. Whenever we're self-criticizing, it's because we're not in our bodies. Our true nature is love, and as soon as we are in it,
such a good point. I never really thought about it that way, but we can only be self-critical if we're outside of our body looking at ourselves. But if we're really truly embodied and we're in it, there's nothing to criticize. It just is.
Yeah, exactly. It just is. It just is.
Wow.
We are nature's nature.
We got a prophet right here. Yeah, that's beautiful.
And it was my biggest lesson as well. It's and that is the only reason I feel I can speak to it, is because that has been my lesson my entire life, is to learn how to love my body and learn how to love myself, because I too have gone through phases of pushing myself with diet and exercise and my good enoughness, and like I think one thing that I've embraced recently that I love is like I've always straightened my hair, always, and that's such a small thing, but I've learned that when I allow myself to just let my hair be natural as it is, I'm able to express love for myself and for my physical body as it is, because it's me accepting myself as I am. And that doesn't mean that I love doing my hair and I love putting on makeup and all that stuff. Because that's
another form of self-love.
Absolutely.
But it's like where you are in that moment, right?
Right.
Like one day I like to wear today is not one of those natural hair days. I had to blow dry and curl, but I know how you're feeling. It just feels good to let it go. And then other days it feels good to adorn.
Yes,
and
totally.
have the nail polish.
And listening to that is so important.
Yes.
Because you shouldn't force yourself either way. If you're coming at it from that intention of just what feels good for me today. And that takes practice. It took a lot of practice for me in just being in my body and understanding what's been blocking me from being in my body and addressing that.
Because I feel like, and I know our female viewers are absolutely going to be able to resonate with this, but in our culture as a woman, oh my goodness, there's so much pressure on looks and what you should look like, or what you should, how much you should weigh, or, you know, it's so interesting too for me, because I'm old enough now that when I was coming of age, thinness was it. Like, you should be thin, and I have a thicker body, and so I could never quite fit into that unless I was anorexic, and I love food too much, so I could never do that.
Me too.
So I couldn't meet those standards unless I was sick. And it's like, woo, look at me, I had the flu for a week. This is great. But that's unhealthy. And then thank goodness for my daughter, who also has the same body type as me. J-Lo came around, and Beyonce came around, and you know, now we have so many of these figures. And I remember being back, it was in the early 2000s, and my boyfriend at the time's friend, when Destiny's Child was just coming out, he's like, oh, that one's cute, and Beyonce's cute, but her thighs are a little too big. She's gonna be too big when she gets older. And I,
How funny. She's the queen.
And that, yeah, she's the queen.
Yeah.
And he didn't know how big she really was going to get. I'm like, think about this guy sitting and criticizing her thighs. And look at, she's like an icon. I just posted on my Instagram story last week. I realized Beyonce has, I think it's 133.9 million followers.
Wow.
We have almost 8 billion people on the planet, and 133.9 million are following Beyonce.
Wow.
That's how big her thighs are. Thank you, Beyonce.
Yes, thank you, Beyonce.
And so now, because of that, the body type is, we have more wiggle room. And now we have Lizzo and these other women that are really just saying, this is me, this is how my body is, and stepping into that. But I also think there's a little of that pressure still. Now you have the pressure to have a big booty, too.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Where it used to be, you want to be really thin, 20 years ago, now it's like, oh, now you got to have the booty that's popping.
Yeah.
And so, and again, it's not, if you want that, like I want that, like I think it's great.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing, but if you are not having a social life because of it, or you're not eating certain foods, that you love, and you're being really restrictive and abusive to self just to get that, that's still that old paradigm.
Totally.
That's still, you're still bound.
Yeah. Yes.
You're still bound.
Still bound. Yes. Unbound is my group program.
Yeah.
But the reason why I feel society kind of takes that push, and thank you for sharing that, because I think that that's important for every woman to hear too, is those, again, are coming from outside sources. Because if you truly were in your body like Beyonce is, like, she is probably the most one of the most embodied women on the planet. And look at what happens when you own your power in that way. You have 133 million followers on Instagram and more. So many people know who Beyonce is. And because she's in her body and because she knows herself, she is just herself. And so because of that, the whole world accepts her. And that's how it is for each and every one of us. But because we're not taught that, or we don't have practices to really be in our bodies and give ourselves that kind of love and nurturing that we need, it's difficult to not listen to what's outside of you.
Yeah, and then she, she opens up her voice, her emotions in a way, which this is going back to what you help women do, is to say their truth and to say what they need to say. And, her whole album Lemonade is really about this stuff that we're talking about, the restrictions put on women. It's about her having, the adversity of being a Black woman. It's about her husband cheating on her. And I love that lyric in, is it Hold Up, where she's like, she breaks it down and she's like, would they want to be with you if you didn't have the biggest woman in your sheets or whatever, like the queen in your sheets. I can't remember the exact lyric, but
I need to listen to that song.
Oh my gosh, that's my whole, that makes the song for me. And the video with the yellow dress and the bat, and she's just like having a blast smashing windows, like in her, manicness or whatever. And I think it's so powerful that she owns those emotions. And that lyric, am I jealous or crazy? I'd rather be crazy. You know, like, I don't want you making me jealous, and then I have to be quiet about this because of your behavior. So she just put it out there, and she's like, this is what you did to our family. This is how I'm feeling. She outed him.
And she's owning it.
Yeah, and she's a married woman. He's not supposed to be doing this, but this is the stuff that happens, that women now are supposed to keep the secret and not talk about it because it's not proper. It's airing your dirty laundry. And she opened it up and she brought it out, and she held him accountable. And what happened? Then he comes out with his album 444, which is a man's apology. And it's not as popular as his other albums in the beginning, but I have respect for him, because he has basically said, I was a different man back then. I was slinging drugs. I was doing whatever I needed to do to get through. I was broken. And I know now that the things that I sang about back then that were demeaning to women, which shows where I was as a man, and I'm not in that place anymore. And I know that that's not, that shows my brokenness.
And that's a beautiful way of owning it too.
He's owning it. Yeah. That's really important. And so that's what he's doing in that album. And again, it's not, I don't think it's going to be as popular as Big Pimpin' or like these other classics. Yeah. And, but it's, again, beautiful. And another thing that he says, he's really talking about equality. He's like, what's better than one billionaire but two, especially if they're the same hue. So he's speaking about also, overcoming adversity,
yeah, right.
and you know, being a person of color here. So I just well done, Beyonce, like well done,
Really?
and well
Yeah.
done, Jay-Z, like
Yeah.
you met the challenge, like way to go. So
And-
we see how this happens in pop culture. Culture starts to shift.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so many things in what you just said that resonate with me, and that relates back to tantric tradition. I mean, I think that this is such a perfect example because we have Beyonce, who had all of these negative emotions built up inside of her because of this event that was put on her by the masculine. And she had a choice. She could either use that energy for good, which is releasing the emotion and really like using her power and owning her voice, or she could be jealous and let that energy drown her
and eat her up,
and yeah, exactly, and
shrink her down,
and
make her project it onto other women.
Shrinking down as Beyonce does not serve the world.
No, she's got those Beyonce thighs.
Yeah, it does not serve the world. Yeah,
thighs.
she needs to get those power thighs out into the world, and that's what she's here for.
Yeah.
And that's like the beautiful part about transformation, transmuting. It's like the alchemy of energy and just understanding how to alchemize that, because I mean, look at how popular that album is and how like it's brilliant because the energy behind it was pure and true. And although it's different, it's not something we're used to from Beyonce or any other female artist, which is like this anger and like you know, the truth behind the emotion that she's feeling. We're not used to seeing that, but because it was so true and it was a transmutation of an incredibly strong emotion inside of her, it was successful. And I think with Jay-Z's part in it too is, I mean, I don't know much about his side of the story or like what's happened through it, but what I see and I hear is a wounded man. And so now he is forced to look at that, to own that, which is also not easy. And although the album might not be as popular, it forced him to own that he's wounded. And now what? Right? So like then that's when that energy shifts for him too. And now that he's owned it, he can step into it and choose to do what he does with it. So,
and he's got a song on there, Family Feud, where he talks about, you know, when the family fights, everybody loses, you know, so really he's bringing it, it's not just about me anymore. He's saying that. He's like, I was very selfish. It's not, I did all these things. It's not about me anymore. It's about my queen. It's about our children. It's about the whole entire family. So
good.
Really, you know, taking that responsibility. Absolutely. Yeah.
Beautiful example of that. And just I loved how it segued into that, and it's just so perfect. And also, one more thing to add to that in owning your power and owning your voice. I mean, Beyonce is a musical artist, but for women especially, the voice. So one of my teachers in Embodied Flow has learned directly under Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen. Are you familiar with her? So she created a methodology called body-mind centering. And so she's all about understanding. She's a little out there, but I love it because I felt what happens when you come from this space and it works. And she's all about like spiralic energy and understanding where the balances in the bodies are and how we're supposed to move as humans and flow in the world. And one of the most important aspects to me hearing from her teachings was that the voice and the pelvis are directly related.
Yes.
And
second and fifth chakra.
Yes. Absolutely. And so as a woman, when you can own your power and own who you are, then you can actually project your voice and bring it out into the world. And this has become like a Beyonce episode, but I love using I just love using her as an example because she's so
good.
Yeah, like she owns her femininity and her power, which doesn't mean a dainty woman who just sits in the corner. It means no, I will be all of me, and I will be all of me unapologetically. And she owns it inside of her and then projects it out through her voice. And she sings and she belts, and like just this magnificent energy is emitted from her as she performs. And she has that connection so well, that strength in our sacral chakra all the way up to our throat chakra, and just owning that power as a woman rather than repressing it, and really stepping into that and who we are.
Yeah, and since this is the Oasis of Awareness, I also want to bring attention to a subtlety of what she does really well, which is when she is owning her power, she's owning her emotion, she's owning her feeling, she's expressing it, but she's not weaponizing it.
Right.
She held that man accountable, but she didn't punish him. So a lot of times this, because I feel like this is the, we talk about toxic masculine, this is the toxic feminine. When a man or a woman, because we each have that masculine, feminine within us, takes their victimhood or something that happened to them, and then they use it to hurt somebody else. You know,
to bash them and
bash them or whatever else. She didn't do that. She spoke the truth of what he did and how she felt.
Right. It was how she felt.
How she felt.
Exactly.
The consequences of his actions and what that brought up for her.
Right.
And the consequences of society's actions, you know, and what that, how she feels as a woman and as a black woman. She didn't try to shame him.
Right.
There's a difference. He might feel shame, but it's because
that's his.
Yes, that's his to feel, not because she was intentionally trying to shame him.
Exactly.
And we live in a time where there's so much polarization right now. And do you see, we're talking about this now, and we have all of a sudden there's like all this noise happening outside. It's like the energy's like
it's waking up,
it's amping up. But we live in a time now where it's like so polarized and politically, and then you know the left says something and the right comes, and then the right says something and the left comes, and then with racism and sexism and all this stuff, it's really important that we're having these conversations and it's all coming out into the open.
Right.
But we're not going to move forward if we are weaponizing and we're just sinking down. We're staying in that hurt place and just throwing mud at each other.
Just hurting each other with our hurt.
Yeah. So we, in order to, and then I have a therapist friend who would always tell me, because he would remind me to be more peaceful and mindful with my children when I'm parenting, because you know he would be like, Natasha, remember connection before correction. And so I always think of that connection.
I love that.
Connection before correction. So you can speak your truth. And by the way, when you're like falling apart and you're just saying what's coming out, you're not teaching someone in that moment. You're just trying to take care of yourself. Yeah. But it's about, how do I express myself in a way that it's not going to hurt someone else? I'm not purposely now repeating the pattern, or unconsciously even repeating the pattern, and I'm simply sharing how I feel and how this has affected me. And then they can choose what they want to do with it. And a person who's interested in emotional intelligence and awakening and healing and moving toward healing will acknowledge that, express their feelings, and then you come together and think about some kind of reparation. Like, how do you make amends, and then how do you get on the same page? But that person who's been hurt, whether it's a woman, whether it's a black person, whether it's, you know, whoever, an LGBT person, whoever in society that has been on the side of the oppressed, we're never going to move to that oneness until the reparation, the acknowledgement has been made. And so it has to be creating space to hear it, and then it's the piece of, okay, I heard, I was quiet and listened, I heard your piece, now this is the action I'm going to take to make it better.
Yes, exactly.
And then that's what happens. And I feel like right now we're still, as a society, we're still in that place of like, people are still trying to figure out how to hold space. Like they don't even know how to hold space. And then some people are starting to get it, and then some people are starting to now take action. But here's the other important piece. You can't take action on what you think will repair it. You have to ask the person what would make it better, and then take action. And then we have the tantric oneness. Yeah, and we come together.
Good, right? And so much of what you said, I feel like, relates back to just like, the solution isn't just what we think is going to resolve the feeling within us. It's what's going to serve me and the greater good, because that's where the healing happens. And same with those who've been oppressed, like the people, the leaders that are trying to repair what's happened. I believe that they're only thinking what would serve this group. And if they were to think, how can this serve me and the group, or how can I be the best, how can I be of service to this group? That changes the intention behind it.
Yes.
And it changes the intention behind an emotion. And you're right, like, she didn't use it for harm. And when you can identify what an emotion is, what if it's anger or whatever she labeled it as, she took it and she thought, okay, how can I use this in a way that serves me and the greater good?
Yeah, and so many women could resonate with it. I mean, that's... It was such a popular album. Yeah. And because it's so therapeutic just to listen. I mean, I have like a whole Beyonce, like, little playlist on I think it's Amazon or Spotify or whatever.
Empowerment.
Yeah, it's for those moments when I have my baseball bat moments, which I don't have, but I want to get like a foam bat.
They have those. Have you been to one of those junkyards where you literally
you can
just
smash things?
Yeah.
No, I've heard of them. I've seen them. I haven't been yet. I don't. I haven't. I right now, like, my arm actually is sore right here from pounding the couch earlier this week. I was walking around, I'm like, why is only my right arm sore? What do I do with my right arm? I'm like, oh, that was my temper tantrum. But that's, it's a healthy way to express.
Energetic release.
Yes, energetic release. And I teach my kids that too. And they're like, what is mom doing? I'm like, this is how you manage anger. You don't scream at another person. You hit the couch and you express your emotions.
Yes,
so,
thank you for that.
Yeah, they're learning how to do that. So let's talk a little bit about triggers, because and how that relates to embodiment, because I feel like, again, culturally, like as a society, everybody's triggered now.
Yeah.
And JP Sears has like some comedy around I'm offended or like triggered, because everybody's triggered. Yeah. But really what a trigger is, it's like you get your buttons pushed. It just shows you where your buttons are sticking out.
Right.
And so I feel like going back to that tantric idea of, we're all one. So why would we throw mud at another person? Then it's like smearing mud in our face, because we're all connected.
We all have that. Right?
Yeah. And so if we look at another person, they're our mirror. And there's different kinds of mirrors. So this person is going to reflect maybe your ugliness, and this person is going to reflect your beauty, and this person is going to... So whatever interaction we have with someone and we get a trigger, it's a mirror showing us where we still have wounding and healing to do. And so, but what we do is we act unconsciously, and we just want to throw mud at them or make it all about them and complain and just... whatever else. And you can pound the couch if you want, that's fine. But then coming back around and realizing it's how can you apply the salve to that wound? How can you work on that wound so it's not sticking out until you've managed enough of your triggers? Because somebody can do something really ridiculous and you could get mad at it, or you could just laugh and be like, look at them, like it just shows you where they're at, and then go on about your day. You don't have to engage in it. I feel like that's a really, an embodied moment-to-moment awareness practice.
Absolutely.
So do you have anything that you want to share about triggers? What do you think of
triggers?
Yeah, like how do you deal with triggers?
I like the way that you described it, which is that they're buttons that are sticking out. And so we see them, and because we are all one and because they are mirrors, we don't realize this consciously, but our natural instinct is, how do I push the button? How do I get rid of it? Like, how do I heal it? But when we're not conscious of that, yes, we see the person as an opposite, an enemy, something that we don't want. How I deal with triggers as of late has been also from the tantric practices and traditions, which is, these are all a part of me. Like, I am this and I am that. I am this and that.
Oh, so interesting that you said that, because I was telling you about my friend Halvey earlier, the interdimensional traveler, and that's one of his phrases. He says, this and. It's about having multiple perspectives. Yes. This is true, and this is... Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And then they're not separate. They're the same.
Yeah.
So it's, I am this, and I am that, and I am this and that. Like, it's all one. And so... Well,
and then that goes back to that tantric philosophy of unity that you are, and oneness that you were talking about, because there isn't the, what did you say? What was the word that you said when we were speaking earlier? The separation. There's not the judgment. It just is.
Yeah.
We're in it. It just is. And it goes back to the embodiment piece. Right. You're just in it. You're not judging it. And right now, as a culture, I think we're in that place where we're just judging the heck out of each other. We're never going to move forward, guys. Like, I know I get stuck in it sometimes too, because I'm getting triggered, right? Yeah. But how do I get triggered? I get triggered because I didn't get enough sleep. I get triggered because I didn't eat well enough that day, or I haven't been exercising, or I had this thing happen, and my battery power is low, and then that thing comes and
destruction.
Yeah, but it's about coming back from that and sitting with yourself and having that awareness to figure out, what is this all about and where can I heal here. And it's also okay, I think, to if there's a certain person that keeps triggering you, or a certain type of person that keeps triggering you, you can unfriend, just stay away from them. Like, I say, last year I was feeling kind of prickly for whatever reason. I want to say it did start, it came to a peak last year this time with the Kavanaugh hearings. That just I had so much rage. I didn't even know I didn't even know that I could have that much rage. But I felt like for the last couple of years, the world's been changing. Mm-hmm. It's been, women's voices are coming out now. Our experiences are being heard in a new way, and consequences are starting to happen. But yet that story, that whole Kavanaugh story where, oh, I didn't remember it, so it didn't happen kind of thing. Yeah. And then she's clearly saying, I remember it very clearly, and this and this and this. That has happened to almost every woman I know. I'm a therapist. I've been a therapist and a social worker for 20 years. And I think almost every woman I know has had an encounter with a man at one point in time where he touched something or tried to touch something or made her feel unsafe. And to have a woman say that and not be believed, I lost it.
Yeah.
Like I realized in that moment that our government is not going to keep women safe. Mm-hmm. Our government is going to keep electing officials that are this kind of man, because I don't think all men do this to women. Mm-mm. I think all women have experienced it, but I do not believe all men do this to women. I believe there's a certain few men that make their rounds to all the women. Mm-hmm. And those certain few men should not be in positions of extreme power that influence the lives of every woman. Mm-hmm. That's what I got angry about. But you know what? Here's the trigger. So there's the trigger. I realize I'm prickly. I realize I don't want to date anybody. I want to be by myself. I even got very exclusive with my male friends. I didn't even spend much time with male friends anymore because I had prickles and I wanted to go inward. And so that's what I did for a long time. It probably lasted about 8 months or so. And I realized, and a lot of women that I was talking to at the time said, we are going to have to take this into our own hands. The government isn't going to change. We have to do this. We have to do this with every single interaction. When the man at the grocery store says something inappropriate, we call him out. We don't just walk away and then he's like, I don't remember what happened. I offended you. And it's like, yeah, but we've been putting up with it for so long. When I get, catcalled, which hasn't happened in a really long time, but it did happen the last time in Encinitas. It was a long time ago. I brag. That's a good thing. And I was like, I was just like, really? You want to take me on? Do you know who I am? Like, I'm going to give it to you.
Wrong person.
And I'm going to write a 15-page paper about all the reasons why you shouldn't be catcalling me right now. No, I mean, I was like, rawr. But yeah, anyway. These sorts of things happen, and it's on us as women and the men who love us and support us to have our backs.
Absolutely.
When this happens, and call somebody out every interaction, every time it happens, in the workplace, in the grocery store, whatever else. And so that's kind of what I was focusing on. I was just maintaining. And in that time period, I think I actually filed 2 restraining orders at the courthouse from different men that came in and tried to, puff. And I was like, no, I'm not going to let it go this time. I'm going to take action. I'm in action mode. And then after about 8 months, I was like, okay, I feel good. I feel like I'm ready to reemerge into the world. And I started dating again, and I started interacting again, and then I realized, wow, I'm like a totally different person. Like, I was in my little cocoon working on my triggers and putting on the salve,
And you need that.
Yeah, I needed that. And so now, I'm having a much different experience and attracting much better men, much higher quality men, and so I don't like that spiritual bypassing thing as you are what you attract, and oh, you're something wrong with you because you're attracting all these bad men. It's not always about that. It's about, sometimes you have a lesson to learn. You have something to pay attention to. And so many times I feel like when you tell a woman that, you're making her wrong, and you're not really seeing the totality, the wholeness, the fullness of what she is. And you just look at it as that's a wound to pay attention to.
Right.
That creates the space for her to do the work and to be self-loving, like we're talking about, and really sink into that. And there's 2 ways to do that. You can do that on your own, or sometimes a really lovely partner shows up, or a really lovely man and helps mirror that side to you and kind of nurtures you back into health, and it can happen either way. So that's the beautiful thing.
And I think too that's important in what you said, is healing ourselves is what attracts the people that come to us. And in my own experience, yes, having that time by yourself is really important, and owning your voice, and it shifts completely who you are and who you end up showing up as. And then having that safe space to reconnect to what it should feel like, or what the truth of yourself is in relationship to the masculine energy. Like that really, for me, has been a powerful tool for shifting every other relationship in my life that involves men or women too, having friction in relationship with other women. That's like, this is where we get to step up in our power as well, is supporting each other and owning our voice, while also empowering other women to own their voice, because it is up to us, and it is up to us to step up and share our truth and place restraining orders, you know, like really own yourself.
Yeah, and supporting each other, and then being like, not being judgmental to women on different levels of the journey, you know. So like right now, if I got harassed on the street, I wouldn't get angry. I would probably just be like, oh, you poor thing, like, oh man, if only you knew how to talk to a woman, your life would be like so much richer, you know, like that. And that's how, and I kind of approach it as like humor or whatever now, because of the space that I'm in now. The wound isn't as fresh, right? It's not as much there. So, you know, and then if I see a woman who gets like super angry, I'm not going to judge her. I'm going to be like, oh, she's on her way, you know.
A loving, compassionate space that you're holding from
her.
Yeah.
And this is why it's so important to have coaches and therapists and yoga teachers and all, like in a community, like you're saying, of women, where we can help each other out and help each other not get stuck in the mud, because we can get stuck there.
And we need the support. And we are creatures of community. That's who we are. That's just our being and our nature. Although we have been conditioned to believe that we should be independent and we can do everything on our own and it's up to me, yes. And we also require community. Like there are so many papers written on animals and how they relate to one another in the wild, and how they're so much stronger in community. And there's love in those communities versus those who go off on their own. Obviously they don't live as long either, because they don't have that protection, but it's the same thing as women. Like we get to, at a certain point, we get to step up and support each other and know that there's strength in numbers, and we need that community in order to thrive. And it just feels so much better when you have people supporting you and like being a cheerleader and pulling you out of the mud, because it can get lonely, and it's a very powerful tool to connect to. And I feel personally, that's only been able to happen for me when I chose to heal my inner feminine and own that and really know who I am. And in doing that, I was able to receive support and love from other women. And I think that that's what this time calls for specifically. We really are in that phase of divine feminine and finding each other in sisterhood,
gathering together. And it kind of reminds me of my sexuality research, because what you're saying is we all need connection. We do, as men and women. We need community, connection. All the research, health research says, you live longer, your health is better, your immune system is better, all of that stuff. But women in particular need it, because that's how we're wired. We need it, and it's good for men. It's kind of like the sexuality research. I'm finding certain things women need. Women need that connection, that sexual connection. For them, their desire cycle is different. Foreplay begins way before any touch has happened for women. And all she needs to have is that stimulus, that the desire to want to get turned on. Like some women think they're dysfunctional because they're not getting turned on as soon as her partner starts to touch her. But what she needs is her unique trigger of what turns her on. And that could have been her partner doing the dishes, or it could have been her partner checking in throughout the day and just asking her, how she's doing. That could have been her desire trigger, so that by the time he actually gets home, or she, depending if you're in a, whoever the masculine or feminine partner is, then she could be ready to go.
Yeah.
Or at that point. And that's a very different thing. So is that women need that. Yeah. Men don't need it, but it's really good for them too. So I kind of feel, there's some...
And that's like knowing your needs too. I think, I really strongly believe everything always comes back to that, is understanding yourself, releasing anything that's not you, being able to identify anything that's not you, letting it go, and then seeing, oh, like, this is who I really am. And it requires that level of work to be able to acknowledge, like, me as a woman, this is what I need, and then communicate that. But that's where the work is. Like, that's where all the work, it all lies there, is removing the blocks. Yeah. Feeling into your body, knowing who you are, knowing what you need, and then communicating that to the world. Like, how am I going to show up in relationships in order to meet my needs?
Yeah.
And it's up to me, it's up to you, it's up to all of us individually to get to know ourselves and to remove anything that's not us and be fully present in our bodies. And something one of my teachers has said, though, is if you meet someone who says they're 100% fully present all of the time, they're lying, because nobody is ever present fully 100% of the time. And if they are, don't believe them and don't follow them. Because it's a moment-to-moment awareness, and it just shifts and sways throughout our life. And that's what everything comes down to, though, is just having the awareness, the oasis of awareness.
Oasis of awareness.
And just knowing who you are.
And I also feel like, as we're, because there's different steps. So we're learning to know ourselves first, and then we're learning to speak that truth. But then it's about saying it in a way that it can be digested by the other. This is a very, it's a skill and an art. And it's not one that we're taught.
No.
And so this is another reason why, like, these women's groups and working with a coach can be so important, to, you know, to work with a woman that's done her work, that has that emotional intelligence to be able to guide you through. And one of my programs that I do, this mind body consulting package, is, you know, my clients have 24/7 access to me through text, because in that moment they're like, how do I say this, and their emotions are all over the place, and if they don't say it the right way, they can go back, because now they've wounded their partner, and then their partner is avoiding, or whatever else, or their boss, or whoever it is that they have the conflict with. So I feel like that's why I offer that 24/7 service, because in that moment, if they just pause, check in with me, or pause and listen to their own inner guidance, and say something, you know, there's an art in how to say things, and say it in a different way, it can completely change the future.
Right.
Because once it's said, you can't take it back.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I think of, like, you know, you work with groups of women. I've worked with groups of women, but I'm that person that used to be distrustful of the feminine, which we talked about before, because it had a lot of wounding from the feminine. So, and I put myself out, once I went more public with my business and everything, everybody's like, oh, you work for women, you're empowering women. And I said, yeah, but most of my career, I've worked mainly with boys. Because I worked with children, and I worked in the school system. So they were the ones that were on the radar. So those were the ones, so I understand male psychology a lot as well. So actually my clients are half men and half women. I mean, they're not half and half. I have men clients and I have women clients. And I'm very much open to transgender clients and non-binary clients too, because I also worked with a lot of transgender kids in the school district. I think because I love the masculine feminine thing.
What a play of it.
Yeah, and when they're actually changing genders and sex, they're changing their sex, like, they have an experience of both worlds, which just, like, has my mind exploding, and I want to learn more. So I loved working with them, because I feel like they're great teachers to teach us about how to get to this unity consciousness.
Absolutely.
But anyway, so I had this wounding with the feminine, and I was not the kind of gal that hung out with a group of women, because I experienced groups of women. I think back to, like, junior high, when I got teased and I got kind of bullied a little bit, and I didn't really trust girls, or they were catty or jealous or sabotaging. And so a group of women isn't the first thing that I think of when I think of fun. And and I did better with boys, because I had a lot of brothers, and I like, just, you know, I speak very forward and direct, and I just say it how it is, and guys can understand that, and I can understand them, and I like that. And I didn't find my group of women until I started my PhD program, and I saw a group of women that had this very masculine, driven nature.
Right.
Because before before I met them, I had women saying, Natasha, why are you going to get a PhD? You don't need a PhD. You don't need this. Just stay home and be a mom to your kids. Like, just work and be a mom to your kids. And I'm like, but that is not what my heart is saying.
It's not serving you.
Yeah.
And
I just
then not serving
have
others.
this super curious brain, and I got to keep feeding it. And so I found my women that are just super driven, super like, I want to do this and this and this, and I can.
Yes.
And so this also goes back to that point that we were talking about with, we can do it alone, even as women, but we'll be exhausted.
Right.
So we have to do it in community. So for me, I surrendered to this beautiful circle of women in my PhD program. And then after that, now I've found so many other beautiful circles of women. So I'm surrendering to that divine feminine in my life and just seeing the value of it and loving it. And now that, you know, I've opened up to that, just amazing things have happened.
Always.
Because it's like you're just being nurtured. And I feel like our society in general, whether you're a man or a woman, is cut off from the divine feminine. And even the men who are catcalling on the street, or they're objectifying women or whatever they're doing, or abusing women, they want it too, but they shut off to the divine feminine a long time ago for whatever reason. And now they see her as something, you know, just an object or whatever else. And those are the men that need to open even more to that divine feminine, as well as, you know, women to accept that nurturing too.
Accepting the nurturing.
And receiving.
Big. Yes.
And it's beautiful to receive from the feminine as well as the masculine. It's a different kind of, you know, flow and energy. But so I wanted to share that with our viewers in case you're one of those women that's like, a circle of women? No, that's not my personality. I'm not going to do that. So I invite you to give it a shot and see if, you know, who are the women that you resonate with, what are the messages that you resonate with. And you have a group offering. Do you want to say a little bit about that? In case there's women here that might be interested in joining you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yes, going back to the idea that women, we need each other. And also back to the idea that I've touched on quite a few times, that what we really need is to release anything that is no longer serving us, or anything that is not our true self. And so my group program is called Unbound, and it's a 6-week program designed to break free of any attachments and restraints to who you aren't truly, and allowing yourself to blossom into your authentic expression.
Your authentic Beyonce.
Your authentic Beyonce. Because we all have an inner Beyonce, let me tell you. And there's so many channels with which to navigate how that can happen. And what I have found in my own experience in allowing myself to be my fullest expression is, I didn't need any more personal development books. I didn't need any more like videos or courses or blah, blah, blah. Not to say that those aren't great, because they are. Sometimes what we need is a space to just release everything that we are not, and just let go of the stories and the lies and anyone or anything, even belongings in your home that are no longer serving you. And then you can step into a space of creativity, and you're able to really see what you want to create in life and what is going to serve your future self. And from that place, you become more confident, and you have certainty in the universe, and that the universe is going to support you, because when you trust yourself, you have faith and trust and full surrender to the powers that are so much greater than you. So in this 6-week program, we focus a lot on spirituality and manifestation, and just truly getting to know the self and honoring who you really are, through mind-body practices, through meditation, through somatic exercises, somatic experiencing, and a lot of inner work and inner healing, and just releasing anything that you don't need in a community setting with other women. I have a group actually beginning this upcoming week, and we have 7 women from all over the world. And the beautiful thing is, all of them are going through the same thing internally, but they didn't have the space or the people or just that connection and that nurturing energy to know that it's okay to be in this space.
So they're coming from all over the world. So is your group online?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So the program is entirely online. I do all the calls are through Zoom, and all the modules are available on the computer. What I find the most valuable, though, is just having a group to come back to all the time. So you can have the tools and access to me and access to exercises to do, but what really brings you back is the group setting and knowing that you have people that you can talk to and rely on. So everything's online.
Amazing. Well, thank you. I also have a group offering. It's not as structured. Yours has a beginning and an end point. It's structured, very intentional. My offering is an online space where you can, it's an online sacred space, and it's ongoing. It's a place where women can gather, and we can post, and it happens through Facebook, and we can share about the struggles that we're having. And then, I'll pop on with one of my co-facilitators, and we'll have conversations not unlike this to say, hey, ladies, this is the theme this week. Are you noticing? For instance, a couple days ago, I noticed the theme was like, I was hearing it from clients, friends, whatever, women kind of over-nurturing and having to pull back. So in that case, I would say something about that and check in with the tribe. So you notice a certain theme, and our way of gathering together is we're doing a mind, body, spirit protocol to clear the body, clear the cells, mainly through nutrition and yoga and some spiritual practices. And then that's sort of like our portal of initiation into the group. And then we go from there. And so if you are interested in learning more about Chelsea's group, where can they contact you?
I will leave a link to my website. It is alllevelsoflife.com/unbound. And so I also do yoga offerings as well, more of the spiritual and psychological side of yoga alongside the physical practices. So you can find me there, or you can find me on Instagram, my first and last name, Chelsea Adair. It's pretty simple, and we'll leave the links to both of those below.
Okay. Amazing. And if you're interested in my sacred Facebook space, natashaedwina.com, you can contact me through my website, or you can find me on Instagram, Natasha Edwina, there as well. And just message me. And we are here to be sisters of the divine feminine and stepping out. We've done our work. We're always continually doing our work. And it's more fun in community. Like it's, come and have fun with us.
Absolutely.
And we have this, we pulled an Isis card at the beginning of this video to see what our viewers really needed to be reminded of and hear. And we got Portal of Light. So you are invited to join our portal of light. You see, she's beckoning you. She's saying, come join us.
The perfect time to do this.
Let's do it. So that is it for today. Thank you so much. What a fun conversation. Yeah. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And thank you for everyone who tuned in. And I hope you will join me on my next topic, either with myself or I have a lineup of really incredible guests coming on this podcast and this channel. And I would like to tell you, stay radiant. And I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.